let's see. On to general session legislative preparation. So Deputy Superintendent Stallings, thank you as always for walking us through this.
Good afternoon, Angie Stallings, Deputy Superintendent of Policy. I probably should be like Deputy Jones and hang out on this table, but thank you for giving us a minute for us to get settled. So we have four requests for statutory changes. Two of them will sound familiar because we reviewed them last month. So I'll start with them and give kind of the update of what we've got so far. So the first policy request that was reviewed and then you made a motion to have them come back the next month is the one that is requesting that the appropriation or the administrative amount that could be used to compensate the external evaluator for that external evaluation that's required by code to be increased from 4% to 6%. Since last month, our staff did reach out to LEAs and asked, the question you all asked is, do the LEAs who participate and use these software, do they rely on the evaluation to determine what software they use? And 60% of them said yes, that they do look at the external evaluation to inform their decisions on how they implement the software in their classrooms. So with that, I'm not sure, we did not get a 100% response from the survey or from the feedback request, but 60% of those who responded did state that they found the evaluation helpful. Any other questions related to that? Okay, I will move on to the second one. And the second one is the topics that require parental consent. You may remember that there were board members who were requesting to see the exact language. My bad, last month I did not point us to the actual policy request backup. The current language is on the left and the new language is on the right. So that is exactly what staff would be requesting. The legislator is to delete what's on the left and replace it with what's on the right. If there's any questions on that, I'm hoping that Jody is available, but if not, I will move forward with number 3 and 4, and then that way, Chair, if you'd like, you could open it up for discussion or questions. The third one is related to the teacher salary supplement program. Each year, for various reasons, LEAs often will have carry forward, meaning they have more funding that comes to them to support the TSSP educators than they need to pay the amount of the stipends. So what this policy request would do would allow LEAs with extra carry forward to use those dollars to just raise the amount of the stipend for their TSSP qualified educators by the amount of carry forward they have. So it would give it's not adding anyone, but for those educators who qualify, their stipend could be increased if they're carry forward funds. And then the last one is would be an amendment to section 63G2302 to provide a protected status or a more protected classification for records related to board member ethics complaints. And this would be to match it with the same protection that ethics complaints against legislators currently have. What I'm stating there is currently when there is a complaint, those records are subject to grandma and people can request them and get them under grandma. For legislators, that is not the same. They are protected with some exceptions. And so the recommendation is that the record protection for state board members matches that, the same that legislators have. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Got a couple lights. Member Davis and Member Bogus.
But you had mentioned that TSSP is going away next year. Is that right? So these changes to TSSP would just be for the 1 year only?
You know, that is a good...
Remaining balances because
to give them to those who qualified for it in the first place. And when you say it's going away, but then the LEAs get to choose, so is that, can you just take 10 seconds and tell us what the new parameters are? They can give it to whomever they want, is in the same amount of money. It doesn't have to be those specific math, special educator, science.
Okay. Yes, so the program, and I apologize, I could pull that up. I'm just going to go off memory right now and just remember the session was, a couple months ago. But the new program acronym is SHINE. I think it's Supplement for Highly Effective Teachers. Currently with TSSP, the code stipulates who qualifies, and it has very specific, like up to the type of education you received, what your placement is, just et cetera. The new program will be, it'll be up to the local district or charter school to determine, I think it either says at least 5 or up to 5, but I think it's at least 3 or at least 5 position types or assignments that the LEA has identified as being highly needed, like needing more to recruit or to retain. And then the amount is also can be determined within a certain amount. So there's a certain appropriation we get right now. Every LEA will receive an allocation under that. And then based on the allocation they receive, they will make decisions on the types of educators or positions that will be eligible, as well as the amounts of the stipends.
So for example, math teachers got an automatic raise just for not going to private sector and staying in schools, and now they're going to get an automatic, potentially decrease in salary if the LEA says.
Chooses.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay, Member Bogus?
Yes, sir. I'm wondering if Superintendent Stallings can help me understand the impetus for number 4.
I will say, and Debbie CAE Davis is in the room, so she may want to help answer this. I did read in the backup that there were 45 complaints that were filed with the State Board of Education. Around 20 were referred, and I think 13 of those were then required to be produced under grandma. I think as staff possibly were just thinking that board members should have the same protections that the legislators do. But I might be reading between the lines there. And the policy request would have more information there. Do you mind?
Can I follow up?
Please, thank you.
I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Chief Audit Executive Debbie Davis. I think Deputy Superintendent Stallings, what she said is exactly where we're coming from with the request. Just when there are complaints, there's documentation, and then the question is, what is the records classification? And so as we've looked into it, and as some of those records have been requested, we dive into the grandma statutes, and as part of looking at that, we identified that legislators have certain protections, or their documents are considered private or protected. Also for ethics complaints with political subdivisions, which would include school districts, there are some protections on records. The State Board of Education currently doesn't have those protected records classifications. So the thought is, why not be consistent throughout government? So a pretty simple, I would think, hopefully, request in statute, just to afford elected members of this board the same consistency with records classification.
Can I follow
Thank
up?
you. Follow up, yeah.
So why aren't these complaints going through the Ethics Commission that all the other complaints are going through? Why are they coming here?
Well, we will tag team the answer. How's that? So there's a specific ethics commission for political subdivisions. There's a specific ethics commission for legislative concerns. And so the board essentially has discretion not fitting with either of those ethics commissions. The board had discretion on how does it want to handle ethics concerns, and board policy, I'm going to get it wrong, 2005? 6, one of them was established essentially to handle, okay, what do we do when concerns come in? So the board has discretion on how that's handled, but that's why they're not going to those other commissions, because those commissions are not, they don't pick up the State Board of Education. Is that
exactly what
okay?
So, sir, I
Okay.
know may I
Follow up?
comment?
Sure.
Because I feel like I'm staring down these ladies and it's not purposeful. I feel, no, I don't feel, my gut says that this is in some capacity a lack of transparency with the public. And I'm not saying that we should let all records go crazy, but if there are justified concerns with the ethics of a legislator, that investigation, when it is complete, should be brought to the public. I think that there's something deeply concerning, and maybe I didn't fully understand the lack of consistency among the process, but I don't know, something about this just doesn't sit right with me. That's just my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess you're saying the current legislative process is, even at the conclusion of the investigation, certain records are still protected, or do they become public after the investigation wraps?
I do know. Okay, it's on. So that is correct. There are certain records. I think it's kind of those detail investigative records that would remain protected. And it says the only record coming out that would be a public record, and there might be some exceptions here or there, but the only record that would be public is a summary report.
That's current practice in the legislature, and that's what's proposed
That's
to be
currently what's in Grandma.
applicable
And so
here.
that's what we're saying, should it be consistent
Okay.
for the State Board of Education as well?
Gotcha. Member Lear. Oh, Member Carey first, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, may I address
Sure.
thank you. So I'm looking at the Utah Code 63G2302, and I'm just having trouble. I see the language that you're referring to if there's an investigation and it remains private, but it starts by saying these are private records, and it just goes through and says if it's insurance, if it's all private. So what exactly, like what text are we looking to change in this code to add that additional protection? And if we can, and if whoever's driving, if we could throw it up on the screen so everybody can see it. But that's really what I want to see, is just what we're adding, what we're taking away.
And I'm looking just to see if we have exact language, but it would be essentially similar to this language in 1D, where it says records received by or generated by or for, and then it would say something like a State Board of Education ethics investigation for a State Board of Education member.
So Chair, if I'm,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we would not delete that. We would not amend that language. It would be like a new E right after that would use similar language to what there is there for a legislator, but for a State Board member.
and Chair, if I may. So we're saying, like, they have an independent legislative ethics commission, some of their records are protected. There's a Senate or House Ethics Committee, some of those records are protected. So we would add another provision that says something along the lines of USBE Commission, same protection.
Yes.
That's what we're looking to do.
Yes.
I'm asking.
Yes, very
Okay.
similar to E. Both D and E, it would be a little different for the State Board because, it's the State Board and not the legislature, but along those lines. And if
Okay.
you wanted to see the exact language, I would imagine it would actually be shorter, kind of like E, but maybe put something about except the summary data report or a document. Yeah, it would probably be that IA would be an exception that would still require a summary report to be provided, right? That was the intent.
Chair, just one more question, if I may. And so when you envision this, because I'm I'm not that familiar. I don't know if the Legislative Ethics Commission or the Senate and House Ethics Committee, if those are standing committees. Are we just looking to put like our audit committee, or are we saying if we convene a special ethics commission? Does that make sense?
Yes, those, Chair, if I might, those, I didn't have a microphone.
Oh. You get it?
Do I have to go off?
So those are not standing committees, and they do form them anytime there is an ethics complaint. But yeah, we would then look at our board policy on how we currently handle, to CAE Davis's point, code requires very specific commissions for the legislature, for political subdivisions, and you can even see here for general executive branch officials, there's also a process. The state board just does not fall under any of those right now. So we have a board policy. So we would say something general like records received by or generated by or for an ethics investigation conducted by the State Board of Education. Now that's a very short one, and then put like, except for a summary report, with this expectation that a summary report would be provided.
No? Sure.
Question. And I'm sorry, so would we need to create policy language that would outline how we form that committee or commission inside USBE? Because currently we don't have any procedures that address that. I don't think. We do. Okay, and
I'm
I'm
going to
done.
touch my mic again. I apologize. The State Board of Education does currently have a policy. It is Board Policy 2005 that we would follow, but the board could amend that policy if you wanted to add additional requirements or, so, yeah.
No, thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Sure. I think what you're saying is there is a process. The code would change to protect documents within the process.
Correct.
At least that's what this would do. Other things members might or might not. Okay. Member.
Maybe this is something that comes after, but my very concern is that the documents,
I think we're hearing someone online. Okay.
that allegations are raised and the documents used to, dare I use the terminology, convict someone, are then kept from that someone as a result of the Grammar Code. And I just don't think that's fair and sporting, and it's very un-American. And so I'm really having a hard time reconciling even other people's processes with what's happening here.
I don't know that that relates to the person accused. It's more public. Well, you guys tell me.
Problem. So what we're talking about is the Grandma Code. We're talking about records and records classification. The actual process of investigation or looking at a complaint, you'll see with like the executive branch, for example, there's a whole separate section of code that talks about this is the complaint process, which would, I would assume, allow for an individual that's being investigated to be part of that process or see, or, you know, they'd have to work through a process. But that's documented elsewhere in code, in statute. It's not part of the Grandma statute. The Grandma statute that we're talking about is just after this whole process has happened, that's talked about elsewhere, what are the records? Are they protected? Are they private? Are they public? What do we do with them? And so that's what's being addressed. And so the board could consider in its policy, what is that process? And similarly for executive branches or political subdivisions or the legislature, who's involved in that investigation process? Right now, those are just in separate places in code.
So to supplement, we could put in our board policy 2005 what access individual board members who are the subject of a complaint would have access to, which is different than Grandma, which is more about members of the public getting access to records related to, say, let's say that board member Straight, because he's right there. I'm not saying he's ever going to have an ethics complaint, but let's say that an ethics complaint or complaint was filed against board member Straight. We're not talking about his access. We're talking about the news or, you know, another person of the public who wants to get access to those records, and then generally, usually grandma is most used by members of the media to publish.
Okay, so then can I follow up?
Yeah.
Why then have board members had to grandma their own ethics documents? If it's not meant to limit our access, then why has that been a pattern that has existed in our agency?
So in those cases where records were requested, grandma requested, I don't believe that it was board members that were making the request. It was media, or it was other stakeholders in education. It wasn't the board member grandma requesting the records themselves. I mean, I'd have to double check for sure who sent those records in, or the grandma requests in, but usually it's someone outside of who is being investigated that wants to see the records. Because in board policy, it even talks about how if there is a complaint and if it does move forward, the individual that the complaint is against should receive a copy of the complaint and any documentation about, hey, you know, the allegation, so that they can adequately respond. So that individual should have access without having to grandma request it, to have that documentation.
Okay.
Member Klein, I think, has a hand up. Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
do.
You know, I'm sorry. Member Lear had it, but we got you in line. And Deputy Stallings wanted to comment
Could
first.
I just make one comment that Ben Rasmussen, who is the USBE Grandma Records Officer, he just wanted me to clarify that even if a record is classified as private, Grandma has a balancing test that would allow release of records if circumstances warranted it. So I just wanted you to know there is that little fail-safe as well.
Thank you. Member Lear, and then Member Klein.
And my comment's pretty simple. I think our protection should be exactly what the legislators or legislatures is. If there's, I think that's just appropriate. And I do agree with Christina that if we need to be explicit in either our policy or in the code, that the information should always be available to the subject of the record. And I think there is something in the code about private records that says it's always available to the subject of the record.
Our board policy 2005, thank you to all the assists from wherever they're coming from. If you look at subsection 1E, it states that if board leadership determines an allegation will move forward, board leadership shall provide the individual board member a copy of the allegation with related supporting information, and then request the individual board member provide a response. So the documentation by our board policy and our board process is that the person who is the subject of the allegation be given the documentation.
That's what I support, is the subject of the complaint gets that information, and the protection may be absent a summary, if that's what the legislature does, is the same as whatever the legislature gets.
Member Klein.
Yeah, this has been a very interesting discussion. And, you know, I have a couple points to make. There's an example from, you know, recently with Phil Lyman requesting records from the St. George Attorney General regarding the Ipsen signatures, and he was told that he couldn't have those because there was an investigation. And yet there was no case number. So it looked very much like it was an obstruction, that they were simply using that ability to say there's an investigation in order to prevent him from having access or being allowed to see those records or being able to obtain them in a grandma. There was, when I was being investigated, and I sent in several grandma requests for.
We have a point of order. Sorry, I missed it. So the question is.
What is the point of order?
The point of order is that it's straying from being germane to the question of whether to provide
No, this is-
grandma protection. So the question,
No,
yeah,
this
I
is
guess is,
very
go ahead, Member
unique.
Klein. I think the question is whether we're talking about the proposal to recommend to the legislature protection of records similar to that
Right.
obtained by legislators. So we're not rehashing
Well,
prior
if
complaints unless it goes to the question of what policy
it goes
provision to
the
make.
question.
Sorry?
This has everything to do with it.
Well,
Because we're
let's take
talking
a
about
minute, Member
putting
Klein. We do
in-
have to move on, and I'm going to rule ultimately whether it's germane. But the proposal is to go through a particular recommendation to the legislature, not to rehash prior complaints.
Well,
So-
this has everything to do with what are we requesting because, especially concerning comments that have already been made, I should be able to say, I made several grandma requests and I was denied even though I was the subject of the grandma. In fact, I was told I would, if you're the subject of a grandma, you should be able to get it without fee even. And I was denied those, and I was told I would have to pay $115,000 to get them. All right. Beyond that, Michael Clara did grandma requests and was denied, even though they weren't classified as protected. But there was, when it went to the State Records Committee, there was debate around it, and they said they were trying to protect me from being exposed, when I have no problem with those being exposed because those records being exposed would have shown the corruption within USBE. But so I looked at this as being a way that USBE can protect itself from scrutiny when it's doing things that are not in alignment. So this is very problematic to me. It looks like we're trying to protect our board members, but I see it as the opposite. It's a way to obstruct information from getting out to the public that would show what's really going on.
All right, that does seem germane to the question then of whether we're in favor of this policy proposal. But the proposal again is to recommend to the legislature some form of protection of records regarding ethics complaints against board members that is similar to that afforded to legislators who are brought on ethics charges in their own independent ethics commission. I think if I'm framing it right, and I don't see any additional lights. So the motion, well, it's not pending as a motion yet. Sorry, we're still, no, I don't think, I'm sorry, I don't think we have a motion pending, do we? We've been going through discussions of possible elements that would go into a motion, but I don't think we've had anybody make a motion. No motion's pending. Yeah, okay, sorry. So that was a discussion on the last, that was a discussion on number 4. So the floor is open for any discussion on
If you have one.
any of these elements. Member Vice Chair Earl.
Can you remind me, if I would like to make a request for policy, do I just make it here? Remind me of the process. I'm just trying to, I don't need two other board members to request that or do I? I guess I'm asking because it's already an
Yeah,
action
Deputy
item.
Stallings.
Do I just make a motion?
You can just make a motion, and just FYI, I do have 2 board member motions just in a shared
Okay.
doc, but
Okay, that's
yes,
what I
you
just
can
checking.
make
Okay,
a
thank
motion.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, other, Member Davis.
I just don't know if they have board member motions already ready about these, or are they seeking motions on these, or?
I think they're in backup for board members who might want to move them, or what's the status, Angie, procedurally?
I would recommend, the only ones we have in backup right now are the staff ones. So I do have 2 motions, but no backup. So I don't know if you want to take action on the staff recommendations first and then go to board member requests for statutory requests, however you'd like.
Okay, and I think all of these are options. One doesn't preclude the other. When staff works something up for us, a board member can bring it forward. The agenda item's been placed, and just to address Vice Chair Earl's question, we do have those that come on the fly. Others are worked up in backup, and both the motion and or backup is provided. That really goes more to the weight and persuasiveness than it does to whether it's open. I think you can, once we've opened this discussion, we've had board members bring ideas on the fly, and if the board supports it, then that often involves some kind of workup after the fact. We might say we want to explore X, as a policy recommendation, and if the board approves it, then staff would typically work that up for us, right? So those are some of the different ways these have moved forward. So we can go either direction. I don't want to preclude any of them. We got 4 sitting here from staff that are open for a motion, but let's see, who's up? Member Carey? Nope, sorry. Member Davis. Okay, then Member Carey.
I move that the board direct staff to work with legislators on potential legislation for items 1 through 4 as enumerated on the board.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Member Straight. To you, Member Davis, if you'd like to address the motion.
I mean, I just think they make sense, and, you know, I think the most discussion was around the last one, and I think consistency is a good thing. I had no idea we were any different one way or another, but if there are provisions for other elected officials, they should also apply to our board.
Okay, Member Carey was up next.
I just have a substitute motion.
Okay,
It's a motion to divide. Is a motion to divide a substitute motion?
no. Yeah,
I second your motion to divide.
If I can make a motion to divide,
can you tell us what the division would be?
the first 3 would be 1 vote, and number 4 would be the second vote.
Okay, is there a second to that, Member Bogus?
Yes.
Wanted to address the motion?
Yeah,
Speak to it.
I am for the passage of all 4, but in particular to number 4, what I would ask is that we see the specific language that the staff would propose to the legislature and any policies that the board currently has that are implicated by those changes.
Okay. so-
Especially in light of the testimony about if you're subject to grandma, you get the documents, and then we had a board member say, well, she requested it and wasn't given those documents. So that makes me, I'd like to weigh that out. I'd like the opportunity to do that.
Okay, so the motion is to divide for purposes of discussion number 4 separately from the first 3. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion to that motion to divide? Seeing none, can we vote? Oh, do we have? Sorry, what? Oh, got it, okay. All right, let's vote if we can. Motion's to divide 1 through 3 from 4.
Hymus is a yes.
Hymus is a yes. Member Klein?
Yes.
Member Klein's a yes. We're missing 2. Missing you. That passes 11-3. The no votes being Member Norton, Member Reel, and Member Lear. So we have a division. Entertaining motions on either the first 3 or the 4th.
Yeah, I'd like to move that, what am I moving? That, wait, what am I? Yeah.
You
Yeah,
can
that-
make a motion on what to do about item number
first 3,
4,
yeah.
which could be whatever.
Yeah, so on item number 4, I would just make a motion that this matter be returned to the full board with a language prepared by staff.
Yes.
So-
I didn't want to cut you off mid-sentence.
Resolution for item number 4, and any current board policies that would be impacted.
Is that about right? It's actually number 1 now. Does that look about right, or are there changes you'd propose?
No, that's perfect, thank you.
Is there a second, or Member Bogus, was your question prior to a second about?
So Member Carey has
motion is.
ESP, and I would second that motion or amendment,
Okay.
however we're referring to it.
All right. Do you want to speak to the motion? Okay, Member Davis?
Just a question. I thought we already had the language. I mean, the language is the language in the code, right? We're just adding ourselves to it, to what is the others have. I mean, that language is already there. And then I would assume if that actually were to pass via legislature, that then our policies would be updated to reflect that. Is that, or would it be a whole different set of language for us?
Deputy Stallings?
It would be a new subsection, similar to subsections D and E, but catered or tailored to the state board. So it wouldn't be the exact language, but it would be, D and E are examples.
The
And
same-
more like D, because D does require the legislature to provide a summary report, where E does not, for executive branch. So it would be more like the legislative language, but catered or tailored to the state board.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other lights. Motion then is a motion to amend. Actually, I guess it's a somewhat of a, no, it's a motion because we didn't have another prior motion. Having been divided from the first three, the motion on number 4 is that the board requests staff to prepare draft statutory language for item 4 and provide a copy of any board policies that are related to the new language. Please vote. Member Hymas?
Yes.
Member Klein? Member Klein?
Abstain.
Staines? Looking for 3 more. And 1 more. Oh. Who's that? All right. That passes 13 to 1, 13 in favor, 1 abstaining. Member Klein. Okay, so that addresses number 4. Again, the floor is open to anything related to the other 3. Those have already been divided. So was the motion made on all 4? Okay, so we go back to the first 3. That's open for a vote or amendments or addressing those 3 in any way that a member might see fit. No? Okay. So I think the motion then is that, let's see, let me get the right language here. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, having been divided, motion is that the board directs staff to work with legislators on items number 1 through 3. Seeing no lights, please vote.
What is the question?
Work on 1 through 3, to direct staff to work on policy proposals 1 through 3.
And you specifically said.
No, don't move it forward.
Well, we don't have the vote up there yet, so we have occasionally, oh, now we do.
Okay, I'm voting no. I should have separated 3 out, or 2 out. Don't like the language, so.
Member Hymas.
Yes.
Member Klein.
No.
Member Klein's a no. Member Hymas is a yes. Let's see, Vice Chair Hart, did you?
Yeah. Oh, no, it's tons better.
Huh?
I would agree with that. But then-
You're a yes. Vice Chair Hart's a yes. We have 1 left.
Yeah, no, I think there's some good things there. That's why I put it right there.
Who are we? We got 1 more? Okay. Passes 11 to 3. The no votes being members Bogus, Vice Chair Earl, and Member Klein. Okay, so that addresses 1 through 4 that were teed up by staff. Floor is open for other board member motions, either in backup or not yet in backup. Vice Chair Earl?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we look at the data we're collecting in our early warning systems, in our, what's the other one? Juvenile justice policy, discipline data, and student backpack, and narrow down what's essential, and ask that we, in other words, we've got too much data there. We need to decide what we want, I think, so. I'm asking us to look at those data things and narrow it down to what's essential. Did that go into a motion real well?
Deputy Stallings?
Well, my question is, at first it said direct staff to look at, so are you asking for
Oh.
research, like for a list of those things to bring back? Or are
Yes,
you?
let's do that for next.
Okay.
Is that the best way to do
Okay.
that?
The board requests staff compile. a
Yes, compile a list of the data elements that are collected in early warning systems, not the broad ones, but the specific data the data that they're collecting, student backpack, discipline policies, so that we can narrow it down to what's essential.
So is that for possible legislative recommendation?
Yes, for
then?
possible legislative recommendation.
Okay. So that, I assume that, that review includes the code that requires its directions, since that's the potential outcomes?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're looking specifically at legislative directed data gathering. Okay, is there a second? Oh, sorry, seconded. Speak to the motion.
Yeah, just, there's a lot of data that's being collected in these areas, and I think we have to ask ourselves, first of all, we've got security. If we're not cautious, we're end up with security problems, but also what's essential in order for us to get done what we need to do. So, and I think it may simplify work and systems if we can keep things more streamlined.
Okay, any discussion of that motion? All right, seeing none, let's tee up we got a hand, Member Klein.
Yes, I'm just wondering if we could maybe add to that to understand who's asking us to collect all this data. Is there national or global or state longitudinal data systems that we are trying to align with nationally that are asking for all of this micro data, and who are these organizations? She's named some specific programs that are collecting the data, but what's behind the data collection? Why is it ESSA? What is it that's requiring us to collect this data so that we know whether or not we can, how much control we have over what is collected and what isn't?
Vice Chair Earl, did you want to respond?
No, I think if,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, knowing who's requiring it would be a good, where in code it is, or if it's in ESSA or whatever. One other item, and I think some of the things overlap, but even if there's additional safety data too, that just knowing where's that being, how does that all weave together? Are there additional points for that too? Sorry, that was one other.
Okay, if there are no other lights, let's vote. Oh, yes, Deputy Stallings.
Wanted to be clear on expectation. Is this list going to go to a committee or to the board? Like, will it go to a committee first, or you want it to come straight to the board? Or
suggest
do you want
the
that to be
board.
up?
I
This
think
is
the board, yeah.
Possible
'Cause otherwise
legislative
we're
proposal, right? It
couple
could be
months
used
down.
for other items that might go to a committee. I'm just going to think out loud here, but the immediate purpose is for a possible policy recommendation to the legislature,
Yeah.
which would come back to here, right? Member Bogus, did you have
A time bound, by October. I'm asking, I just would feel more comfortable affirmative voting if we had a time bound recommendation.
Is this going to be lengthy?
I don't know.
Oh, because I'm just saying, is October,
Who will be doing this? Me, Aaron. Is October too short, or is that good? They're wondering if October board.
no, it's October. Okay, if we can do October, that would be great, so we're not too far before the legislative session, but
Okay.
Board Member Earl, is that a friendly amendment to have that information added to your motion?
Well, it
that I
sounds-
suggest?
Well, I'm sorry, one more time. Yeah, I think,
I just don't see it in the motion. Did you want it added? Is it a friendly?
yeah, that's fine. Just where in code or where in law that it requires us to gather the data. Am I understanding you correctly?
Or if there's systems or policies beyond what's in our state code that that our state is trying to align to, whether it's national interoperability database systems or federal laws, et cetera,
Okay.
that we're trying
I,
to fulfill.
I guess we'd have to do, if it's in code or if it's in federal code, I don't know how we could maybe speculate on whether it aligns with certain provisions or not. Is that what you're asking? I'm just trying to understand.
Like the rationale, for us doing this, why are we doing the early
Right.
warning system, this data backpack? What are the national trends around this that we are trying to align to?
It's a pretty
I
big list
personally
for
just want
October.
the code, where it comes from, and I guess if you wanted to make an amendment, just where it comes from, and then what is asked to be collected.
If I
So-
could make a suggestion here, I think the purpose, again, bringing it back to this section is to tee up potential recommendations on policy to the legislature. And so if they bring back the review of what the legislature requires in the way of data collection, where it comes from, we could then have time for board members to address, well, should that be gathered? Is it being demanded by, federal or some other place? So that we could get to the why after October, I guess. But I would think what's being requested for October is the state requirements. And then a why question might come after that. Things like, where's this coming from? Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that we have time before October to review all federal data demands. We have time to review all state demands for purposes of the legislature. And then if the state demand is being dictated by federal or elsewhere, that would be a question to address after we get the list. Is that in line with where you're going? So I think what we're looking for in October, at least under the current motion, is state demands for data in those areas. And then we could talk about the whys and wherefores once we get the list, if that's consistent with, I think, the maker's suggestion. Okay. Any further discussion?
Just I don't know if there's an objection, adding safety data, if there's any provisions with some of the new recommendations so that we have a broad look and we can kind of compare. Saying we're gathering this here, we're gathering that there, so we're not either duplicating or gathering information that's not necessary.
Without objection? Hearing no objection, that'll go to the list. Okay, let's vote if we can. We got to move through some stuff, so motion is open for voting.
Member
Hymus
Parise,
is a
yes.
yes.
Oh, sorry, okay. We got Hymus and Klein both yeses, right? Okay. Yeah. It's about the vote. No, we're looking for state requirements for data, but that could include the source of the requirement. If it's federal, then we would know that. We wouldn't be addressing separately. Yeah, Klein's a yes, Hymus is a yes. Two more? Oh, okay, so that passes unanimously among those present.
Was there other motions out there? Christina has one.
So, let's see. Okay, Member Bogus.
Thank you, sir. I would move that the board request staff work with the legislature to amend subsection 53G-6-8039 to add the following language. 4 is a computer adaptive assessment, semicolon, or 5 is an assessment that an LEA or school administers in lieu of an assessment described in subsections 1 through 4 above in the code. And if I may speak to the motion very briefly?
Yes, you may.
So very quickly, Superintendent Stallings and Director Nielsen, I believe, is his title. We had a good meeting and fleshed this out in many different capacities, and we believe this is a short, fruitful addition to address the systemic issues that exist inside our schools. So anyhow, I put that forward for the board's consideration.
Can you clarify where that sits? So is it under, I know it's 9, but there's a whole bunch of, there's A, B, C, D, E. Do you have? Is it under, at the request of a parent, student's parent, an LEA shall excuse a student from taking an assessment that, okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry, my mic is. That's okay, I see the 4 over here, sorry, I was looking up there. Sorry that I was a little slow on that one. Okay, is there any other questions to this? No other comments? Okay, are we ready to vote? All right, go ahead and vote. The motion is before us.
Primus is yes.
Board Member
Klein
Klein?
is a yes.
That gives us 7. There might be a few more out there. What are we missing? Just 2? So I still have 2 more. Who are we missing? We've got 2 more out there. That's it? Okay, so the motion does not pass. Do you have another motion then? Okay.
So I move that the board direct staff to prepare language intended to amend the appropriate legislative code to ensure parents receive appropriate, timely, and unambiguous notice when a program is funded and therefore governed or has accountability factors in contravention of Utah code, whether those contraventions are overt or through exception clauses, and to prepare that language for presentation to the full board in October. I texted you all of that. Oh, but there wasn't a question. Did I? I just texted you updated language. Sorry, it's right there. I texted you updated language. I think that is the updated language. I think I texted you further updated language. Yeah, it's all good. You know the keyboard shortcut.
Was there a second? Okay, yeah, will you speak to it? Because I'm not sure what it means personally.
Beautiful.
Could you help me?
Yes, so this is actually in response to the issues we addressed earlier, wherein we have programs in our state that are governed or accepted out of Utah code, and our parents don't really understand that. They don't know it. They're not fully aware. And I do believe that notice needs to be codified, that parents know when programs that receive federal funding and are governed by things that are outside of the scope of local governance, and that we figure out where that's at, and then we codify that so that we know that schools have to submit notice. I don't know if that answers your question.
Board Member Laird, do you have your?
I do. May I speak?
Yes, please.
I have a couple of questions regarding this. First of all, it says, intended to amend the appropriate legislation to ensure parents receive, but it doesn't doesn't tell us who would send that notice. And hold that thought. So my concern is if LEAs who allegedly are doing things that are nefarious or in contravention to the law, they're not going to knowingly do that. So how would they know to send that notice to parents? It would be unlikely that they would say, we're going to start this program. It's in conflict with SB 81 or whatever the Sam Hill that one bill is. They're not going to do that, and it would be an immense amount of work for the USBE staff to check every program that an LEA has that might be alleged to be in violation of law. So I'm curious how this would work practically. Maybe the maker of the motion would like to.
Do you want to
that.
respond to that? No, I don't. I'm just asking, I'm directing.
Well,
So-
I think to me, it's very clear and it's not overly burdensome. One of the things we talked about today was very specifically the after-school programs that are governed by, sorry, that's off, I checked with Kelsey. So it is governed by the federal mandates and is exempted from state code. That would be one. Parents need to receive that notice.
Who would send that notice?
The school would.
The school would say, we made a mistake and required this, but now we're not.
They would just submit notice that this program is funded and exempted from state code through X and X and exemption, and parents need to understand that Utah code no longer applies in this situation.
And who would call that to the school's attention?
Well, I think our LEAs need to know what they're doing that is not governed by Utah code.
Right, but
Okay,
still.
okay.
I'm
we're
just
gonna-
curious who would call
I
it.
know, that's okay, just,
But I need to,
Yeah.
if there's an answer to that, that will help me understand.
I
how
know,
to
but
vote.
if you direct it through the chair, then it's
Okay,
not,
chair.
it doesn't become.
Chair, if the maker of the motion would please tell us, how would this come to the school's attention?
Maker of the motion, do you have an
Schools
idea on that?
know. They're not unaware. When they install programs that are federally funded and exempted from Utah code, they know. And it's very simple. You just submit notice to your parents that these programs are installed and they're not governed by Utah code. They're governed by either the U.S. Department of Education, the department, whatever department it is. And if they're exempted, they know. They're not unaware.
Okay, okay. So then I do have a question, because I'm just thinking through child nutrition. Like today, we will be voting on equipment, right? Is that, so the equipment would need to be posted, that we've got federal funds? I'm just trying to think through the mechanics of this and whether it's, what the feasibility of it is. And then also you've got, all the different pieces to child nutrition. I'm like, is it every different piece? So anyways, if you can maybe answer that. Go ahead, if you want to answer. I'm just, how granular are we looking at getting is what I'm maybe asking the question about. Because sometimes, like on child nutrition, there's many different avenues where funding could be coming in. Special education, there may be many different avenues that have federal funding, so.
So
If you
I-
want to answer, you don't have to answer.
I'm not sure of your question. I guess there's a lack of clarity there to me. Like, I understand child nutrition, that's governed by the Department of Agriculture. You've got Title I funds that are governed by the U.S. Department of Education. Then you've got clearly your after-school program here that's exempted through other Utah codes with accept clauses. They know, like LEAs know, and I just think we need to find the appropriate space, research it, and work on codifying that notice so parents are aware of what's going on in schools and who governs those specific programs.
Okay, are there additional questions? Okay, go ahead.
And I mean, I fully admit that I could be displaying ignorance here. But, okay, so I'm thinking through again, doing this. I think my question is probably for Deputy Jones, maybe. So if I were to, try to comply, which, with this, if it were a thing, do we not receive, aren't state and federal, say, any of the three big programs, special ed, school nutrition, and Title I, are state and federal funds commingled? Like, do we also get state funds for those objectives? Do you understand what I'm saying? Will you let him speak? No, it's okay.
So, Madam Chair, the answer to your question is it's quite clear in the code that the legislature or that the law intends that federal money supplement state money.
Right.
So there's no commingling. It's used to supplement what you, the board, and the law directs as the public education system use of those funds, right? So I do believe I understand what Board Member Bogus is
think-
trying to do.
I do
I
too.
do also want to make sure, though, that you know the law also stipulates that we can't accept federal grants that do conflict with the code, right? If the law is explicit that we have to act or do something in a particular manner related to public education, and we as staff or an LEA sees the conflict in code, of course they would consult with their legal teams, right, and see if there's opinion. But those controls are already in place. All the money we receive supplements state-funded programs from the
Right,
federal
and it
government.
doesn't
Okay.
supplant, it's not allowed
No,
to supplant.
we're not allowed to
Well, I
supplant,
guess
'cause then we
com-
get into unallowable costs, right?
Right.
Or unallowable expenditures.
I
yes.
guess what I'm trying to, okay, so I'm trying to follow the law, and I need to send home information on, so there are items in these three programs that are paid for out of one, but then there's items that are paid for out of a different pot of money, right?
Yes,
So
in
I don't
accordance with the
know-
applicable laws that govern the expenditures on those programs.
But would I know, say, in the case of nutrition, would
Okay.
I know if something was from the state bucket or the federal bucket? Would I
Yes.
know that?
Yeah, you should, because your
How?
accountants should be doing the programmatic codes.
Oh,
They should
okay.
be tracking.
Okay,
So we have what's called you and your board rule of stipulated program accounting.
Okay.
So if it's a federal program, they have to attribute those costs or those expenses to that program by
Okay.
way of their financial system.
so it's kind of like the difference between buying something using land trust funds
Yes, ma'am.
and then labeling it with land trust
Yeah,
funds.
and
That's
so we
the
use
way
the
to
chart
think
of
about it.
accounts. We give you
Okay.
we give the LEAs the chart of accounts that stipulate which codes they should use so that we're ensuring that whatever the funding source is being used allowably.
So that's for funding.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That
Okay,
helps a lot
okay.
to.
Let's see. Is the motion pending then without any further discussion? I don't see any hands raised. So the motion then is that the board directs staff to prepare language intended to amend the appropriate legislative code to ensure parents receive appropriate, timely, and unambiguous notice when a program is funded and therefore governed or has accountability factors in contravention of Utah code, whether overtly or through exception clauses, and to prepare language for presentation to the full board in October. Okay, please vote. Member Hymas?
Hymas is no.
Member Klein?
Yes.
Member Klein is yes. Member Lear is a no. Somebody have her. Three more. That's part of my. Okay, that fails 4-10. The yeses being Member Bogus, Member Klein, Member Davis, and Member Carey. I would like to bring back.
Yeah, here, you gotta turn it back to me.
Oh, I got to give it to
Before
you.
you can-
Sorry.
Okay, now,
You're in the chair seat. I have a
Yep.
motion.
All
So
right.
I was on the prevailing side by stepping out during the computer active testing that yours, Member Bogus? I forget who brought it. I
We
checked
just
with the
checked.
parliamentarian.
Well, we're still.
I don't just
Oh, they're still reading.
spin the bottle. I asked whether my absence counted as a no, and they said it did, which put me on the prevailing side. So I'm moving to bring back that motion, having been a no by my absence, for reconsideration. Tell me if I'm doing this right. Tell me, oh, I lost my parliamentarian. Oh, okay, we got a difference here. Sybil, I'm double checking this. I thought it looked like I was on the prevailing side by being absent. Sorry, Michelle. Hold on just a sec. Let me. Okay, that's where Sybil was going. Okay, that's fair enough. No, Sybil thought that was the answer. I wouldn't come up with this on my own. but if you're overruling it, fair enough. I thought that would, Sybil seemed to think that would count, but we'll go with your take. So, all right, I am DQ'd. That's okay. That's why we got a couple of sets of eyes and. Okay, other motions then. We have other motions. Any motions either in backup or from board members? Hearing none. I'll just say one issue that's bubbling up out there, and you probably saw this. I don't have a motion. I don't know if it doesn't seem anybody else does, but there's been discussion about assessment flexibility. It was discussion at interim. A couple of ideas have been kicked around. Third grade testing flexibility, development of locally developed answers for high school, course-specific type of things were discussed at interim. I may have mentioned I ran into a superintendent in a conference that had a waiver, federal waiver, to allow interim assessment to fulfill the demands of the ESSA requirement for end-of-year testing, but they could do it summatively. Montana's doing that. They got a waiver for that. So that's been a subject that's been kicked around, and the legislature kind of opened that discussion at interim. But I have an interest partly because Wasatch, my district, had ideas about what could better allow them to assess student performance, adjust instruction, work with their PLCs, that kind of thing. They were looking for something locally developed, similar to RISE for high school. So that was a question that came up. I know current providers are interested in addressing that. You know, Pearson does Aspire Plus, so I think that's one that is not quite ready for prime time, but I suspect in October there might be some activity here that we might consider. So just throwing that out for visibility. Anybody else before we move on? I don't have a motion again. I just wanted to kind of raise it.
Do you have a
Member Klein? Yeah.
I do have a comment. And I don't know, this is not a statutory change, and maybe it needed to be in the previous section where I brought this up, but I'm just thinking of the parent portal. Having gone on there and looked around, I don't see any mention of 53G 10205 on that portal, which is specific to the rights of conscience for students and parents and their ability to refrain from participating in aspects that violate their religious belief or right of conscience without being penalized or discriminated against. I think that would be an important thing to include on the parent portal.
Thank you, Member Klein, and I think some of us may have already put that request out to Cassie Hayes, who maintains the parent portal, so we can address that. Okay.
All right, I'll watch.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, our policy team. And we have, let's see. I guess we have 11 strategic plan and goals, right? Unless we wanted to roll that. Did you guys have thoughts on what you wanted to address next? How much time do we need for that? Because we've got... No. We got funding, yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. We have funding requests, and then where do we want to go? We got 1 hour. Sorry for we're doing funding. I just was trying to see what else we're trying to get to.
I think we can get to. Sorry.
Got a hard stop
we
at
gotta
6.
do,
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, sorry. Our general consent, and then an executive.
Well, so,
That's why I'm saying that we could at least start, we may have to do executive again tomorrow too. Get through some of it we can.
so are you suggesting to save the funding discussion to tomorrow? Jenny or Molly?
Yes, yes,
My,
yeah, because we've only got an hour.
oh, we've got two, so the things we have to do, executive session, because Ben's not here. And then,
I would say, because we have staff probably waiting general consent, so they're not.
is that a staff need then, Superintendent? We need to hit that while staff are here on the consent calendar? Okay. So Sarah, let's hold, sorry, we may have to roll that to tomorrow on the funding discussion. Let's see if we can get through the other stuff, but, thank you. We do need this month, and looks like we might have to roll this till tomorrow, to decide what funding requests we want to see on our list, and then we send those out for the ranking between this month and next, and then we have a final crack at either putting things on the list, revising the ranking of the list for the top 10, and then sending that to the governor by the deadline for the whatchamacallit act. Sorry?
Funding request today and consent tomorrow if possible,
Ah,
just based on who's here.
okay. Well, let's do funding and then leave time for executive, right? How much do we need? Yes, how much do we need for executive? Do we have any estimates out there? Yeah, sorry. There
were a few I was, yep.
Should we go into executive and then come out to funding then if we can?
Okay.
Half an hour for UPAC. Should we just break into executive and come back with what time we have? Because
Yeah.
that's our time certain, right? Okay. If we do